The show begins, and we see Joro, a high school student, meeting his childhood friend Himawari on his way to school. They run into Sun-chan, a prominent baseball player, and Joro's friend. Himawari, annoyed, leaves in a huff. Cosmos, the president of the student council and Joro's secretary, arrives to collect Joro for council duties. Himawari's demeanor turns sour when she sees Cosmos. Later, in the student council chamber, Cosmos proposes a weekend date to Joro. The same night, Himawari contacts Joro and asks him to meet her at the weekend. Cosmos and Joro meet, go shopping, and have a lacerelli picnic. At the end of the day, Cosmos asks Joro to join her on a park bench, intending to tell him something important. She confesses her affection for Joro's best friend, Sun-chan, recounting her infatuation that began during last year's regional basketball game, when a disheartened Sun-chan was seen in distress in the corridor. She asks for Joro's help in fostering a relationship with Sun-chan, which he agrees to. The next day, Joro meets Himawari for their rendezvous, enjoying meals and time together in the park. At the end of the day, Himawari invites Joro to join her on a park bench for a serious conversation, during which she reveals her deep admiration for Sun-chan. Her affection for Sun-chan blossomed at last year's regional basketball game, where an emotionally distraught Sun-chan was seen in distress. She asks Joro to help her win Sun-chan's heart, and he agrees. That night, Joro seethes with frustration as his attempt to emulate a forgetful anime protagonist fails miserably. He devises a scheme whereby the successful pairing of one girl with his friend would enable him to woo the other. The next morning, Joro encounters Himawari and is angered by her opportunistic behavior. He reveals to her that Cosmos is her rival for Sun-chan's affections and assures her of his neutrality in their rivalry, promising to help them both equally. Grateful, she expresses her gratitude, while inwardly he belittles her. They set up a meeting with Sun-chan to grant Himawari a private audience, but her botched lines require Joro's intervention to salvage the plan. Cosmos meets Joro in the student council chamber, where he confronts her about her manipulative behavior. He reveals Himawari as her rival for Sun-chan's love and reiterates his impartial stance, promising unbiased help to both. She expresses her gratitude, while he inwardly despises her. They arrange a meeting with Sun-chan to facilitate Cosmos's private conversation with him, but her mistakes prompt Joro to intervene once again. During lunch, Joro avoids both Cosmos and Himawari and seeks refuge in the library. There he meets Pansy, whom he dislikes for her incessant insults. Pansy reveals her habit of spying on him and threatens to expose his plans to Sun-chan if he does not comply with her request for a tête-à-tête on a park bench, claiming it to be important. She confesses her affection for him, much to his dismay. He politely rejects her advances, but she begs him to reveal his hidden, cruel and manipulative side, the qualities she admires. He adamantly refuses, but succumbs to her blackmail and agrees to have lunch with her every day. Later the next day, Himawari has 2 movie tickets and asks Joro to help her give them to Sun-chan, so that Himawari and Sun-chan can be alone together. Joro manipulates a social situation, but Himawari messes it up by acting too excited. Sun-chan kindly gives his ticket to Himawari so that Joro and her can go together, but Joro manages to save the plan and get them on a date together. Cosmos has homemade lunches, and she asks Joro to help her give them to Sun-chan, so that Cosmos and Sun-chan can be alone together. Joro manipulates a social situation, but Cosmos messes it up by acting too weird. Sun-chan kindly invites Joro to have lunch with them, but Joro manages to save the plan and get them on a date together. Joro complains to Pansy that the other 2 girls are hopeless, and Pansy agrees to help him so that she can spend more time with him. She tells him to learn Sun-chan's preferences for girls. Joro meets with Sun-chan to ask him about his preferences for girls. Sun-chan reveals that he has someone in mind and asks Joro to sit with him on a park bench as he has something important to say. He confesses that he is in love with Pansy and that he fell in love with her at last year's regional basketball match, where, after crying in the hallway, he met Pansy, who gave him some encouragement. Sun-chan asks him to help him meet Pansy, and he refuses, but tells Sun-chan not to give up. He approaches Pansy, but she discovers his intentions and angrily declares that she will only go out with him and not Sun-chan. Sun-chan sees her and questions Joro, but Pansy steps in to save Joro. She calls him a manipulative jerk and leaves. Pansy texts Joro not to come to the library for the next few days, and he spends his time manipulating situations to get Sun-chan together with Himawari and Cosmos. Cosmos summons Joro to give him some bad news, that Sun-chan has approached her to get her help to get close to Pansy. She accuses him of lying and betraying her by encouraging Sun-chan. She calls him a manipulative idiot and leaves. Himawari summons Joro to give him some bad news. That Sun-chan has approached her to get close to Pansy. She accuses him of lying and betraying her by encouraging Sun-chan. She calls him a manipulative idiot and leaves. Pansy summons Joro, suggesting that she set up the situation to punish him. Everyone else arrives and sees the two of them together in the library. They all accuse Joro of lying and manipulating them. He snaps and angrily tells them to go to hell, accusing Cosmos and himself of being wary of manipulating him and treating him like a convenient tool, when all he did was try to help them. He congratulates himself on his excellent acting, but Pansy ruins his performance by announcing that he only helped them so that he could claim the girl who was unsuccessful. Sun-chan hits Joro, ending their friendship and telling him to stay away from all three girls. Bad rumors spread throughout the school, and Joro is shunned by the rest of the student body. Pansy invites Joro to the library and creates a situation where he can eavesdrop on a conversation between her and Sun-chan. Pansy accuses Sun-chan of lying and setting Joro up, using the other girl's feelings to tarnish Joro's reputation, so that he can get together with Pansy and punish Joro for not helping him. Sun-chan reveals that he was betrayed by Joro in middle school because his crush at the time asked him to help him get together with Joro. This was his revenge on Joro. Sun-chan asks why she likes Joro, and she reveals that despite his manipulations, he still tried his best to make Sun-chan happy. And she fell in love with him at the regional basketball game last year, where Joro waited for Sun-chan before the game with his favorite food to cheer him up, even though he looked stupid. Joro remembers meeting a pretty girl that day while waiting for Sun-chan. Sun-chan, who thinks they are alone as no one comes into the library, threatens Pansy. Joro reveals himself and scolds Sun-chan for manipulating the others and making light of the girl's feelings. He orders Sun-chan to apologize to them. Sun-chan agrees, but says that he has not yet lost to Joro. Pansy compliments Joro on his mean side and he leaves. It is revealed that she also had the other two girls hiding in the library. The next day, Cosmos apologizes to him, and Himawari protects his desk from graffiti. Sun-chan also confesses to the class that he manipulated Joro's bad reputation, and his apology restores Joro's good name in the school. In the library, Pansy reveals that she is the girl he met on the day of the baseball game, and that she is in love with both the kind and loyal Joro and the cruel and manipulative Joro. She gives him a kiss. Joro has agreed to continue meeting Pansy in the library, but is annoyed that she continues to hide her appearance. She later reveals that she is hiding from someone who is stalking her. She advises him to get in touch with his old friends. Hurrying to class, he meets Isanaro, a member of the newspaper club. Isanaro is busy writing an article about the upcoming flower festival, an important event at the school where a boy dances with three girls and eventually chooses one. Seeking Himawari's company, he approaches her, but she dashes away. He manages to catch up with her after she stumbles and falls. Himawari confesses that she's been avoiding him because she feels responsible for getting him into trouble. However, they reconcile and renew their friendship. Together, they approach Sun-chan and propose that they study together, but he refuses. Undeterred, they express their desire to rebuild their friendship, prompting Sun-chan to apologize and agree to mend their relationship. In conversation with Isanaro, he suddenly realizes his oversight in mending fences with Cosmos. Eavesdropping, he hears Cosmos in tears, feeling neglected despite her efforts to reconcile with him. They resolve their differences and rekindle their friendship. Joro invites them all to a study session in the library. Cosmos, who is a senior and top of her class, takes charge and assigns them a daunting task of 5,000 maths problems. As they walk home together, Joro is delighted that their friendships have been restored, which fits perfectly with his secret plan to win the affections of all the girls. The next morning, Isanaro approaches him and suggests they meet on the roof, which leads to the discovery of a park bench. Isanaro invites Joro to sit with her, explaining that she has something important to discuss. She admits that she thinks he is manipulative, sleazy, and cheats on all the girls. Referring to last year's basketball game, she accuses him of suspicious behavior towards a girl, and threatens to expose his actions in the school newspaper. Blackmailing him, she insists on shadowing him to observe his behavior. However, she offers not to publish the article if he proves he isn't manipulative. They meet Cosmos, who reveals that Joro has been chosen as the boy for the flower festival, along with Cosmos, Himawari, and a first-year student. Izanaro continues to watch him. Joro informs everyone of the situation, but the girls remain suspicious and Izanaro can't help. Accompanied by Cosmos, Joro meets the first-year student and tries to play down their closeness to fool Izanaro. However, when they meet Kimi, the first-year student, she's alarmed by Joro's reputation and refuses to dance with him, leaving the festival. In preparation for the festival, Joro practices dancing with his friends, only to discover the next morning that Izanaro's article has been distributed to the entire student body. Izanaro apologizes and tries to have the article withdrawn because of the damage done to Joro's reputation. His friends decide to keep their distance for the time being, leading to the cancellation of their library meetings and dance rehearsals. As an apology for the accidental printing of the article, Izanaro offers to dance with Joro at the festival. Later, Joro receives news that the flower festival needs a replacement, and since Izanaro has stuck by Joro since his reputation fell, he asks her to step in for the dance. Cosmos arrives and asks to speak to Izanaro alone, but Izanaro refuses to come unless Joro joins them. Cosmos refuses Izanaro's participation in the spring festival. Cosmos accuses Izanaro of manipulating Joro and setting him up. She reveals that Izanaro has been spreading rumors against Joro among the freshmen in order to get Kimi to drop out of the dance festival. Izanaro had also forged the access log to the newspaper club to hide the fact that it was she who had printed the incriminating article. Cosmos reveals that the ultimate goal was to form his friends and dance with him at the flower festival. Cosmos advises her that this is no way to approach true love. Izanaro confesses to Joro, but Joro rejects her for causing trouble for him and his friends, and says he will never go out with her. After Izanaro leaves, Cosmos reveals that his friends never abandoned him, and that they were working in the background to get Pansy to dance. At the flower festival, Joro dances with Cosmos. During their dance, Cosmos reveals that she did not expose Izanaro, and that only she and Sun-chan know of her plans to isolate Joro, and she kisses Joro. Pansy arrives dressed for the dance, and the audience is shocked at her appearance. They dance, and she thanks him for helping her to finally have some friends in high school by getting them all to eat lunch, study for midterms, and dance together. Joro's mother, Laurier, is making him breakfast after the flower festival when she cheerfully announces that he is going out with his friends today. Joro has no idea what she is talking about until he sees Pansy on his couch. Pansy was on her daily stalking mission when she ran into his mother, and later Laurier invited her over for breakfast. Joro is shocked to hear that Laurier and Pansy know each other well, as they kept running into each other while Pansy was stalking Joro. Pansy tells him about a trip to Pool Aqualand, and the rest of her friends will be there too. At the pool, Joro is excited to see his friends in their swimsuits, and when Pansy arrives, she explains that this is going to be a stereotypical pool episode. After playing in the pool, Joro is sent to buy drinks for the group. A girl in the queue insults him and seems to recognize him, but he has no idea who she is. He tries to find the bank just in case. The girl, who is called Sasenkwa, starts to apologize, saying that her friend was mean to someone and wants to make it up to her, and Joro is pretty sure that she is talking about herself. Joro says an apology is fine. Later, Sasenkwa asks him about his preferences for girls, and he says he likes neat black hair. She then gives him a drink as a thank you for answering her questions. Back in the group, the girls compete to do an activity with Joro as each girl wants to do a different activity. They decide to have a competition to see which activity he likes best. Himawari and Joro go on the water slide, but Joro's trunks accidentally come off, and Sun-chan has to intervene to save his dignity. Cosmos takes him for a ride on an inflatable dolphin. But Cosmos suddenly has a fantasy, and Joro is forced to ride the dolphin alone until San-chan joins him. Finally, Pansy takes Joro to the spa where they share a relaxing moment, and Pansy is happy to see all her friends having fun. She starts to tease him, but Sun-chan intervenes to lighten the mood. Later, when asked who he had the most fun with, Joro declares that he had the most fun with Sun-chan, and the two of them run off into the sunset, leaving the girls behind. At school the next day, Joro looks through the photos from the pool and sees that a scenario has published an apology article in the school paper. He is surrounded by his classmates, apologizing for their bullying. Sasenkwa arrives, and Joro is shocked to see that she has changed her hair to look like him. Sasenkwa also apologizes for treating him badly last week. A year ago, to encourage his best friend Sun-chan after he lost his baseball game, Joro went to the cheerful skewers stand to buy many boxes of skewers for Sun-chan. The vendor, Subaki, admires his devotion to his friend. In the present day, Subaki transfers to Joro's class and kisses the back of Joro's hand to show her devotion. She moved to the school because her family has opened a new, cheerful sewing shop nearby, which Sunchan loves because he loves their skewers. Subaki expresses her willingness to do anything for Joro, which attracts Sasenkwa's attention. Joro remains suspicious of Tsubaki's intentions, believing himself to be immune to manipulation. However, Subaki offers to prepare lunch for him, and when Joro tests her, she passes, winning him over with her kindness. Thrilled by her actions, Joro begins to see her as the main heroine in his mind. During lunch with his friends, when Cosmos tries to give Joro a large bento box, Subaki quickly outdoes her and gives Joro her bento box first. Although Cosmos tries to pass off her bento as leftovers, Joro arranges for her to share it with the group when they're alone after lunch. Pansy congratulates Joro on distracting Cosmos, but warns him that he can't maintain the current situation forever. She gives him her favorite book to read. After school, Himawari tells Joro about her upcoming birthday. Later that night, Joro can't find Pansy's favorite book and realizes that he may have dropped it. Cherry and Sukumi offer to help him find it. They eventually find the book in poor condition and tell him where he can buy a new copy. The next day, Cosmos brings another hefty lunch, but Joro ignores it, determined to find a job to afford a replacement for Pansy's book. When Subaki mentions the hourly wage at her family's restaurant, Joro begs her to hire him. Feeling guilty for ruining Pansy's book, Joro gives her the damaged book and promises to work to earn money for a replacement. Although Pansy suggests that he stay with her in the library and not buy a new book, Joro insists on getting her a replacement. After a week with the lively skewers, Joro has begun to settle into the job. Subaki praises Joro for his hard work, but Joro is unimpressed. The next day, Himawari surprises Joro on his way to school and inquires about her absence from tennis practice for the upcoming tournament. Despite her attempt at an excuse, her deception is obvious. When she asks about Pansy's book, Joro turns the conversation to her upcoming birthday. During lunch that day, it becomes clear that Pansy disapproves of Joro's work at the Merry Skewers. Subiki reminds her that Joro has vowed to reduce his hours once he has accumulated sufficient funds for the book. Later that evening, Sasenko and her companions visit the restaurant, with Sasenko remarking on the coincidence of choosing cheerful skewers, where Joro happens to be working. However, a mishap causes Joro to accidentally spill food on an angry customer, requiring Subaki's intervention to resolve the situation. That night, Pansy confronts Joro without her disguise, claiming that his inferiority complex towards his friends and their aspirations is leading him down a dark path. Feeling bereft, Joro believes he has nothing, despite Pansy's insistence that she stands by him and loves him. In a moment of haste, he dismisses her, immediately regretting his words. At lunch the next day, Joro remains despondent, but finds solace in Himawari's apparent enthusiasm for her upcoming tennis tournament. After lunch, Sunchan tries to lift Joro's spirits, while Tsubaki advises him to leave early for the night. Desperate, Joro seeks solace in a drink and meets Hosey, whom he confides in. Hose encourages Joro to take action, emphasizing the importance of pursuing meaningful endeavors. This enables Joro to approach Pansy and apologize for his earlier harshness. He assures her that he is not working out of selfish motives but out of genuine desire. Pansy, in turn, encourages his diligence. When he finally has enough money to buy Pansy's coveted book, Joro receives a message from Himawari, but declines, citing a busy schedule. At the bookstore, he discovers that the last copy of Pansy's book was bought by a girl, later revealed to be Himawari, who sacrificed her tennis lessons and savings to buy it for him. Shocked and guilt-ridden, Joro learns that she prioritized him over an important tennis match, citing his unhappiness as the catalyst. Himawari apologizes profusely, prompting a heartfelt apology from Joro, who is grateful for her selfless efforts. During the tennis tournament, Himawari watches her friends cheer her on and receives a new racket, a birthday present from Joro, bought with his earnings. Grateful, she kisses him on the cheek and emerges victorious. Celebrations ensue, with Pansy inquiring about Joro's reading of her cherished book. Remembering her bookmark, which asked if he would help her in her time of need, Joro answers in the affirmative, much to Pansy's delight. In the kitchen, Subaki praises Joro for his unwavering support of his friends, emphasizing his pivotal role as the unifying force among them, and urging him to see himself not as a supporting character, but as integral as any other. One day at school, Joro is grabbed and forced into the science lab. His attacker is Tampopo, the underclassman who refused to dance with him at the flower festival. She flamboyantly introduces herself as the super idol manager of the baseball team. Joro thinks she is an idiot and suddenly sees a bench in the science room. She tells him she has something important to tell him, He is unimpressed until she asks him to make Sun-chan and Pansy a couple. She explains that it all started at last year's regional baseball tournament, where even though the team lost, she wanted to tell Sun-chan that she was the new manager. But she saw him with a beautiful girl at the exit and assumed that he and the girl had fallen in love. She didn't know who the girl was until the flower festival, when she realized that the girl was Pansy. She wants Sun-chan to be happy so that the team can play better, and then she will be popular and become a super idol with lots of fans. He refuses at first, but she bribes him with naughty photos of herself. Suddenly, a scenario reveals itself, having stalked Joro and crawled through the window. She offers to help Tampopo with her mission to eliminate Pansy as a rival. At lunch, Joro is uncomfortable with the plan as he watches his friends. When a scenario arrives and apologizes to Cosmos for the dance, she grabs Joro and hugs him in front of the other girls. At the end of the day, Sasenkwa has 2 tickets for the amusement park, and her friends watch as she tries to ask him out, but she abandons her plan and runs away. Tampopo, a scenario and Joro discuss their plan, and Tampopo asks Joro to put on an act for Pansy. She gives him an earpiece and tells him to talk to Pansy. He doesn't make any sense, and she asks him about his earpiece. Suddenly, the rest of the girls arrive, and Joro notices a group of boys admiring the girls. Tampopo is upset that boys at school are admiring other girls and gets angry when they mispronounce her name. Joro decides to make his own plan and confess to Pansy instead. But when they meet the next day, Joro tells her that he has no intention of confessing and that he was only pretending to help her. He reveals that she has been lying about her goals all along and that she had holes in her story when it came to last year's baseball tournament, where she actually cheered for the rival team. A scenario arrives and reveals that she has also found out that Tampopo originally wanted to go to the rival high school, but ended up at her school instead. Joro reveals that her real goal had nothing to do with Sun, but was to get Pansy a boyfriend instead, and Pansy reveals herself. Pansy was a kind upperclassman from Tampopo's middle school days, and Tampopo wanted to help Pansy. Tampopo is horrified to discover that Pansy likes Joro instead of Sun-chan, and when Joro asks her why she wanted to keep her identity a secret from Pansy, she runs away. Pansy tells Joro to forgive Tampopo, who was bullied and forced into a relationship in middle school. She thanks Joro for his help, but a jealous scenario intervenes. Pansy also takes Tampopo's bribe and replaces it with a photo of herself. That night, a teacher tells Cosmos that the school library will be closed. The next day, Pansy ambushes Joro and thanks him for helping her with the Tampopo situation. She compliments him, but then confuses him when she randomly starts dancing, and Joro discovers that she is wearing an earpiece and taking orders from Tampopo. Joro tricks Tampopo into revealing herself by asking an angel to appear. Tampopo falls for the trap and runs away. Suddenly, Cosmos arrives and tells them that the school is closing the library. The group discusses the closing of the library at lunch, and Cosmos tells them that the only way to keep the library open is to get many more students to use it. Everyone announces a way they can use their clubs and talents to get more students to use the library. But Joro has no special skills to help. That evening he meets Hose and asks him for help, who agrees because Hose's own school has also closed its library. The next day, Cosmos is surprised that Joro has a friend at Toshibu High, as they are rivals from their own high school. Hose arrives and Joro is surprised to see Cherry and Tsukimi. When they go to the library, Pansy is shocked to see them, as they all recognize her. Hose is also shocked to see them, and Joro becomes suspicious. Hose gives off main character vibes, and Joro realizes that Hose is in a love triangle with Cherry and Tsukimi. They all went to the same middle school together, but Pansy nervously sticks close to Joro. Joro is showing Hose around the library when Tsukimi suddenly asks if Joro has a crush on Pansy, which he denies. After the group has worked on redecorating the library, Tsukimi and Cherry come up with a situation to separate Joro from Pansy by asking the group to go to a restaurant without Hosey and Pansy. They encourage Pansy to go home with Hose, but a scenario intervenes, asking Pansy to help her with a newspaper article, and saves her. That night, over drinks, Cherry and Tsukimi openly declare that they love Hose, but want the group to help bring Pansy and Hose together. Joro asks about their own feelings, and they explain that they have chosen friendship over love and want to help Hose. Also because Joro can't say he loves Pansy, they want to save Pansy from heartbreak, and she will be happy with Hose. Joro, Himawari, and Cosmos all refuse to help, but later Cosmos sends Joro away because she wants to talk to Himawari privately. Joro meets Pansy in the library and asks her to explain the situation. She calls Hose a demon, and he remembers that Pansy wore a disguise to hide from a demon, and Pansy confirms that Hose is the demon she is running from. Pansy reveals that in middle school, Hose and his friends helped her stay away from evil people, but she doesn't like being around Hose because his self-righteousness hurts those around him. Hose fell in love with Pansy, and Hosey's vibes hurt the girls around him because they all sacrificed their happiness for him. Tampopo was also affected, and Pansy was forced to become Hosey's girlfriend. Joro promises to help Pansy and protect her from Hose. Later that evening, Sun-chan meets with Pansy and explains that his chance has come. Soon, the library has become popular. Sun-chan points out that Hose has been a great help, but Joro sees that Pansy is uncomfortable with Hose and his girls staying around. Joro decides to get help. He goes to Tampopo and reveals the situation, telling her that he knows she has a crush on Hose. At last year's regional baseball game, she actually tried to meet Hose, but failed because Hose is back. Tampopo asks Joro to get closer to Pansy, and he agrees. At the library, Joro asks Hose if it would be okay if Pansy started dating, and Hose says uncomfortably that it would be okay. Joro plans to confess to Pansy, but is shocked to discover that she has already agreed to date Sun-chan, and that Sun-chan has just confessed to her. Pansy tells Joro that he has been a nuisance to her, and that he should stop coming to the library, and he leaves sadly. Joro meets Sun-chan and asks if this was a ruse to help Pansy from Hose, but Sun-chan reveals that he was just waiting for the right moment, and now he has Pansy. Sun-chan tells Joro that it's time for Joro to be the best friend character, as Subaki listens from outside. Joro is working on a scenario, Cosmos, and he is conscious but cheerful, and although he is happy on the outside, he is unhappy on the inside. Subaki approaches him after work to tell him that he can't give up, and that Hose and his girls won't stop harassing Pansy even if she has a boyfriend. Joro decides to help Pansy. That night, Sasankwa bumps into him as her friends cheer her on. Noticing that she has been depressed, she gives him a drink and tells him to act like his true self. Joro thanks her for her valuable advice and she runs away in embarrassment. The next day, Joro meets Sun-chan and apologizes that he won't be able to cheer him on at the baseball finals because something important has come up. Sun-chan tells Joro that he understands. At the library, the group meets without Joro and Sun-chan. When Hose suddenly confesses to Pansy, Himawari and Cosmos try to intervene, but Cherry and Tsukumi defend Jose. Joro suddenly arrives and Pansy first tells him to stay away, but Joro quotes Pansy's favorite book to her delight. Joro challenges Jose, with the loser having to stay away from Pansy, and Joro manipulates Jose into accepting the challenge. When Jose tries to back out, Joro confidently declares that he will never give up Pansy, forcing Jose to accept. For the challenge, Joro reveals copies of Pansy's hairpin and gives one to each of the girls in the room, and that at this year's baseball tournament, each girl will give their hairpin to whoever they think should be with Pansy. As there are 6 girls, a 7th pin will be given to the girl whose school wins the tournament. Cherry and Tsukumi say that the challenge is unfair because Joro has an advantage over Hose, and Joro is confident that he can win in this underhanded way because most of the girls are his friends. But when Cosmos asks if she, Esanero, and Himawari can cast their vote early, they all vote for Hose. Joro despairs when they all declare themselves rivals to Pansy, and they all confess to him. Sun-chan remembers when he played baseball as a child. He had a best friend called Shin, who promised to support him. But over time, Sheena and the rest of the baseball team became jealous of Sun-chan's skills. They made fun of him behind his back, while Shiba threw away a keyring that was a symbol of their friendship. This gave Sun-chan an intense fear of rejection, and he adopted a sunny personality to hide his true feelings. Meanwhile, Joro is still shocked by the confessions, and the girls announce that he should give them his answer after the baseball game. Cherry thinks that since the challenge involves the girls, each girl who has received a hairpin should be able to add a rule to the challenge. They add a rule that each girl can only have 1 pin. Once a pin is given, it can't be taken back. The challenge ends with the baseball game and can't be extended. Hairpins can only be given when both Hose and Joro are present. Hairpins cannot be stolen, and the punishment for the loser is final. A defeated Joro agrees to the rules. On the day of the match, Himawari calls Joro and asks if he can go to the match with her. He overhears that Cosmos, Himawari, and a scenario are planning to distract him during the game. Joro hides from them in a food stall, but is forced to sell food to pay them back. Sun-chan arrives at the game and remembers the day he met Joro. The first time they met, Himawari hit Joro too hard, which broke Joro's friendly personality, and he insulted her under his breath. Sun-chan realizes that Joro wears a mask just like him, and they become friends. On the way to the match, Joro gives Sun-chan some refreshments, and Sun-chan notices that he has also arrived. When the match starts, Joro finds Pansy in the stands and asks her to give him a hairpin. She asks him what Joro really thinks of her, but before he can answer, they spot Hose, and Joro has to retreat. Joro helps a lost girl to get Cherry's approval, and Cherry tells him that he has already lost. He tells her that Pansy doesn't like Hose at all, So even after the challenge, Hose has no chance. But she refuses to give up her hairpin. When she starts to call Joro, he creates a distraction and flees. Suddenly, Joro runs into Hose, who tells him that he has no chance. Hose goes up to the stands to get better mobile phone reception to call the girls. As Joro runs off again, he receives a call from Cosmos asking him to meet her, and Joro agrees without intending to meet her. He notices that the mobile reception seems to be fine. Suddenly, a girl nearby is crying because she has lost her house key. Sun-chan doesn't hear Joro in the stands and decides that he is still dealing with his challenge. Sun-chan watches as Shiba strikes out and thinks that their team might lose the tournament again. Meanwhile, Sasenka helps Joro find the missing house key, and when he thanks her, she tells him he owes her a favor later. He meets up with Tsukimi, who refuses to give him her hairpin and also refuses to give him a scenario in which he ambushes her. He tries to tell Tsukimi that he will help her with her feelings for Jose, but she refuses. Jose arrives and asks the girls if he can talk to Joro alone. Meanwhile, Sun-chan remembers a time when he overheard Shiba and a teammate making fun of him for being the coach's favorite, and how Sun-chan only got where he is by sucking up. Sun-chan watches as Joro arrives and defends his best friend, realizing that Joro is hiding his true self to protect his friends, not his own feelings. When the two are alone, Hosey explains that he wants to change the challenge. Hosey wants to make the punishment harsher, so that the loser won't be able to talk to any of Pansy's friends. To a shocked Joro, Hosey reveals his true self, that he is fully aware that he is the protagonist of a romantic comedy, that he is fully aware of the feelings of the girls around him, and that he always manipulates the situation to his advantage. He tells Joro to go back to being a supporting character when the girls arrive. As the end of the baseball game draws near, Sun-chan remembers when the girl he had a crush on asked to sit with him on a park bench, where she confessed that she was in love with Joro. At the game, Sun-chan criticizes Shiba's play in his head until he realizes that Shiba was playing for teamwork and makes a bunt play to score a point for the team. Tampopo gives Sun-chan her hat to wear for the last inning, and Sun-chan goes to compliment Shiba on his play. Suddenly, Shiba reveals the keyring from their primary school days, and Shiba apologizes to Sun-chan for being jealous all these years. Sun-chan also apologizes as he realizes that he had the same feelings of jealousy for Joro. They make up and are determined to win the match. Meanwhile, after the girls arrive, Joro tells Pansy that the rules have changed, but not how. Before Tsukimi and Cherry can hand over their hairpin, Cosmos and Himawari tell them not to use Pansy as an excuse to give up their own feelings, and that Cosmos and Himawari were once in the same position. They once agreed to help Joro get closer to Pansy, against their own feelings, because they didn't want Joro to hate them. Cherry reveals that they were right, and she and Tsukimi explain that it was all Pansy's fault. Himawari, Cosmos, and Asanaro defend Pansy, telling them that they should be honest about their feelings, and that they are all still good friends with Joro, even after their confession. Cherry and Tsukimi both confess to Jose, and he gently lets them down. Cherry gives her pin to Joro, and Tsukimi gives hers to Jose. Jose starts to declare victory, but Joro reveals his true strategy when Subaki arrives with a hairpin and gives it to Joro, as the rules did not state that other girls were not allowed to have hairpins. All the girls he helped during the match give Joro a hairpin as Sasengu arrives to give one as well. Hose reveals that when he let Joro go earlier that day, he was trying to figure out Joro's strategy and correctly determine Joro's own strategy, and that Jose also spent the day going to the girls at the match to collect hairpins. His total is far more than Joro's, and Joro loses. Jose also reveals that the rules change with the punishment, and that the loser can't talk to any of Pansy's friends. Cosmos, Himawari, and Asanaro try to challenge the rules, but they can't. Hose declares victory when Joro says the challenge isn't over. Sun-chan arrives with Tempopo, followed by a crowd of girls with hairpins. Joro reveals that, when he gave Sun-chan refreshments earlier in the day, he secretly enlisted his best friend's help, and after they count the votes, they find that the results are tied. And Hose asks what the results of the baseball game were. Sun-chan remembers that at the end of the baseball game, Sun-chan realized that the batter was too strong, and Sun-chan was depressed that none of his friends were cheering for him. When he removes Tempopo's hat, he sees that Joro left him an encouraging message about last year's game. Invigorated, Sun-chan takes the field and leads the team to victory, which they celebrate with him. Sun-chan and Joro make the victory sign together, and Sun-chan kindly breaks up with Pansy and leaves the group, desperate to end the challenge in a draw. Hose begs Pansy to give her the hairpin. Joro tells Pansy that she can do whatever she wants, and she declares that she is in love with Joro and gives him her hairpin in front of Hose. Hose complains that he can't lose to a minor character, and that Joro is a nobody, and Pansy tells him to stay away from her and her friends. After Hose is dragged away, Pansy announces that Joro must give his answer to the girls. Sasengwa almost confesses, but can't at the last minute. In response to the confessions, Joro tells all the girls that he loves them and declares that he can separate them into different days of the week as his own personal hurry. Offended and angry, the girls all leave him. That night he eats at Subaki's cart, and she correctly notes that Joro didn't want to ruin the friendships in the group by choosing one girl, and decided to be the villain so that all the girls would remain friends. Later, he meets Sun-chan with a box of skewers, his best friend's favorite food. Sun-chan uses his winnings from the pool challenge to ask Joro to eat the skewers with him, and they go to a nearby park and eat on the park bench. An excited Sun-chan announces that since the team won the match, they will go to the national tournament, and Joro cheers him on while the girls secretly watch the friends celebrate together. Sun-chan really wanted a cute girl to accept him, but he is happy to have a best friend, and Joro who loves him. That night, as Joro returns home, Pansy approaches him to thank him for keeping his promise to her. As they walk together, he says that the moon is beautiful that night, a poetic Japanese way of saying that he loves her. Well, that is all for now. Joro finally got his kiss on the bench moment. What did you think of the anime? Let me know in the comments.